Hi, this is Dave, and welcome to part 2 in our 3-part video series on pimping out our games. And today we're going to be talking about pimping out our boards. And I'm going to show you some products and different things that you can do that are going to support the actual gameplay experience. So I want to talk about a few different things. Playmats, sleeves, a couple of other products that are out there that are going to really enhance our gameplay experience. So let's take a look, and I'll come back at the end with some closing thoughts. So as we start talking about pimping out our boards, I'm going to talk about different accessories, things that we can see pretty much that are going to be on the table that are going to be supporting as we're playing the game. And so we have Roll For It, which is a dice game, and one thing that we may want to do when playing with a dice game, and this also has cards in it, is to use a player mat. And so I've had this one for a little while, and this is just a generic one from Dragon Shield. It has good dimensions on it. It's a little more square than ones you'd see for Magic the Gathering, but it's got a nice grip on the back and has a pretty plain design with it wide open in the middle here. And so as we're playing, it's going to give a nice cushion for the dice to roll on, so they're not going to be clanking around all over. So as we're rolling the dice, they're going to be nice there, not make so much noise. And then the other thing too is if we go to claim any of the cards, for example here, there's a nice cushion, makes the cards easier to grab. And so definitely want to think about getting a playmat for using with some of your dice games. And so these are relatively inexpensive. They have ones that have more graphic design on there. You can actually even be creative. Here's some playmats that came with some Kickstarter projects that I had. This happened to be for a game called Tower, and you essentially don't even need to have, you can put the player pieces on here, but you've got a nice mat. There's little squares where everything goes, spot for the resources. Another one for a game called Tasnia, and all the spots where the tiles will go in the main board, and then there's spots for cards. So you could actually, if you have like Photoshop or any kind of graphic design software, you could come up with and create your own. But the player mats definitely enhance the playing board that we're playing on. So another thing too in supporting our board per se is sometimes you have spots where you're going to have resources all over, and again we're going to use my white cubes from before, and you know, sometimes you have them sitting there just next to the board, and they're just laying there. And some of the times what you want to do is, you know, they're going to be emptied out from a bag, and it's going to take a lot of time to set them up, and everything's going to be bagged up, and the next thing you know, inside your box you're going to have umpteen million bags from all your different pieces. And so one thing that you can do is pretty inexpensive. You can buy these little Glad cups, and you can just put the resources right in there. If they don't fit in the box, you can stack them up and bring them out or whatever, or just use them off to the side. But now you have a spot to contain your cups, and if you also decide that maybe you wanted to store them, they can fit in the box. You can just get something with a lid, and that's going to take care of your bits right there. So you can have a couple of them there. Let's say, for example, maybe that was a sugar resource, and here we have wheat. So you have these little cups, and you can pass them around the table, or everything's contained right here. So that's a simple way to pimp out our board, just by having these little storage cups. I've seen people use the silicone baking cups, and those work pretty well too. Another thing too is if we have to draw tiles from a bag, or draw resources or anything from a bag, sometimes you want to change how they look, or sometimes they don't even come up with one. So for example here, these are all the monster tokens from Elder Sign, and they say to draw them out of a cup. Well, you could do that too, or I just have this bag here. Or you guys have all seen Rado has the chicken cup. I happened to be at, I think, Home Goods or something, and I found this owl, so it just kind of made me think of Clash of the Titans. But it's pretty big. I've got big hands, and my hands can fit down in there, so if you don't want to use a bag, you can throw them all in a cup, just like this. And we can just stir it around and, you know, give it a shake and reach down, and whatever I need, I can draw out the monster token that I need. So you can use a cup like this. You can use a drawstring bag like this. If you want to get something a little bit more thematic, if you're playing games that have a lot to do with the Mediterranean and kind of trading or whatever, you can get these bags that they look like they're burlap, and so these are kind of neat. And you can just put all of your pieces right in there and really give it a real thematic look for anything that you have to draw stuff out of a bag. Or if you want to also, you can get ones in different colors, and maybe you want to get smaller ones, and you can use these to store all of your starting player pieces. So, you know, match up the color. So for example, if this was the brown player, all the brown player's pieces would be in the bag, and you just, you know, hit them the bag, here you go, you're ready to go. So just some neat things there. Some other stuff to do to pimp out your game. Simple stuff, most people do it already. Sleeving your cards. Got them all sorts of different colors, shapes, sizes. These happen to be ones from Fantasy Flight. These are, I guess these are Fantasy Flight also, these Star Wars ones. Legion Supplies makes them. Some of them, they have them specifically for different companies. Here's some smaller ones. And so these are really, really good just to protect your cards. It's basically a simple way that you can essentially pimp out your game just by sleeving your cards to protect them. And that does a couple different things too. And number one, it's gonna, if you decide you don't want the game anymore, the cards are going to be essentially in excellent condition. And also, if there's any kind of errata or any kind of updates for the cards, you can use them for that. If you decide to purchase a game that is in another language, you can easily use paste ups then. So it's going to expand your ability to have more games in your library. So these are, I think, these are usually the ones that are pretty inexpensive, and they're opaque on the side. You can color code those. So just some different things that you can use to support your boards. I've got a couple more things that I want to show you. Okay, so the next thing that I want to talk about is some products from Boardgame Innovation, and they make acrylic overlays for games, and it's really going to help to keep things neat and organized, especially if you are real anal about how you keep your play area. And the other thing is to just prevent the upsetting of gameplay. And so first thing that they make is some overlays for the different tiles in the game Istanbul, because if you know, as you're moving around and you're doing stuff, your hands are always on the board. You could accidentally bump things around, and all of a sudden you're uncovering things like, oh well, how much was that supposed to be, and this one's uncovered, and it could be knocked off the board. The other thing is keeping track at the post office. If you accidentally knock one around, you don't know where they're at. So they've made a couple of overlays here, and I'm going to show you how they work. And the first one is, we'll just show you how this is going to work for the gemstone dealer. And if you can see here, it's actually marked, says gemstone dealer, and it's clear, and it has cutouts for all of the different spots where the rubies are going to go. So let me just move these off the board, and we'll just do this, and it fits over just like so. So you can see, let me bring it up close, and you can see where it's recessed over all of the different spaces, and it fits. And again, it says gemstone dealer, and you just fill in all the spots where those rubies are going to go, and they're not going to get moved around. If you're moving around the board here, I can shake it, they're not coming loose at all. And so this is going to solve that problem, and it's also going to keep things neat and organized, and you can see everything else right as we're playing along. So that's that particular one there. There's the similar one for the Sultan's Palace. I might be able to just overlay it and move some of these pieces around. Maybe, maybe not. I was trying to cheat it a little bit here. So I'm actually missing one. It goes over here like this. Alright, so we have the Sultan's Palace here. Again, this is going to keep this area neat. And then the post office, this one up here, again, this has spots for the wooden cubes to move in. So let me move them here. And just overlays like that, and then depending upon where they go, each time if you need to move them, they just move right in from slot to slot. So for example, here we move this down, and now it's going to stay like that. They're not going to get moved around. You can't accidentally roll dice into them and knock them out of place. So you're going to be pretty well set to go there. I dropped it on there and it actually shook the whole thing and made them bounce out. But for the most part, you're not going to have an issue with that at all. So very, very well done. Keeps the player pieces neat and organized, especially if you're moving around. You know, it's just, and it's going to help protect the tile underneath it. The other thing that they make, and this is really, really more so important, is for the wheelbarrows. They make a wheelbarrow cover, and I'm just going to go ahead and move these cubes off here, because a lot of times, you know, if you're moving and you're keeping track of resources or something like that, and it's really easy to roll your dice, and then you could accidentally, you know, roll into it. It's knocked over. You can hit it with your fingers. You're moving around things. So this is going to solve that problem. Again, just has an overlay that goes right over it. And now when you put in your all of your resource pieces, and you're keeping track of your goods, they all have their own little track with the spots where you can just move the cubes back and forth in. And as you're getting your rubies, they fit right into the little slots. Now, if you go into the caravansary, no, at the caravansary, you pick the Wainwright and you pick up an additional spot for your wheelbarrow. It fits in here underneath just like that, and then you have another piece that's going to fit in. And this is going to continue until you can max out your whole entire wheelbarrow, and they'll have all the different pieces will all fit in there. So those all fit in, and these are all going to fit in, and you have a perfect fit for your thing. You can move all the way up now to the end, and you're going to be able to keep track of all your resources and keep track of your rubies at the bottom. So these are pretty cool for Istanbul. Let me show you one other set that they made. Okay, the last thing that I want to show you is for pimping out Terra Mystica. Now, you know that on this player board there's going to be all these different sections for all these different pieces that we need, and in fact, here's all the player pieces in here as we speak. But they can get knocked around if you want to keep everything neat and organized. They have an overlay that's going to fit just like this. So I'm going to put it up close. And so you can see everything is going to fit in its proper place. I'm going to load it up here in a second. You can see also there's going to be able to be movement from the bowls. And then depending upon if we're using the fire and ice expansion or not, there is a slot that is going to be able to be filled here. So this is just a generic one that would go here. Otherwise, there's one that will handle the rings, which I don't have the expansion for this, but I can show you that there are some acrylic spots that will fit in. Actually, this would be like one for the shapeshifters, and here's like fire, and there'll be one for ice, and it's got different spaces that you could fill in. And then they have these acrylic rings that can be moved around, but I don't have the expansion for that, so I'm really not sure how that works. But in the meantime, here's the plain one that will just drop right in, and this will set right over on our board, and then I'll just show you how all the pieces are going to go in here. So we'll just drop these out here all on the table. And as we look, this will go right in here like this, and then we have our piece that's going to go right here, and then we have our other pieces that will drop in here, here, and here. So here you can see we have it all filled up. We have all of our pieces exactly where they need to stay. They're not going to move anywhere. It's nice and sturdy. Everything is nice and organized, so you know exactly where we are on the pieces. We have these little slots to be able to move from the bowls of power. We have this over here. And then obviously as we're starting to change things and put markers in, there's slots for the different markers to be able to go and move up here, and then also up here as well. So just really cool. They have enough for all of the different faction pieces, and so they don't have markings on them, so they're generic, with the exception of some of the spaces for some of the factions in the fire and ice. then those will be etched in there and marked. But this is really, really cool, worthwhile addition for if you play Terra Mystica a lot, to keep everything nice and neat and organized. It really makes it look great. Keeps your board area, your play area nice, neat, and organized. It's going to keep everything from being knocked around, especially if you're sitting like right there. You know, it's in the middle, and so you've got a nice groove and nice channel here. This fits perfectly. So you know, at the seam, if you look at that fit there, that's perfect. And like I said, we've got these nice grooves in here that's going to keep everything all organized. I'm going to back out there so you can see the thickness here of that acrylic. So those are the overlays from Boardgame Innovation. They have ones for other games as well, but I wanted you to see the ones for Terra Mystica and for Istanbul. So those are just a bunch of ideas of things that we can do that are going to essentially pimp out our boards. Alright, so just a couple of thoughts for pimping out our boards. And the main thing to keep in mind when you're doing this kind of stuff is neatness and for organization. It's going to help the gameplay experience overall. It's going to facilitate a nice, neat, and organized playing area, whether it's a main gaming board in the center or a player's own personal gaming space. Lots of different things that you can do. I showed you lots of different ideas, and they fall into all sorts of different price range budgets for you to explore. So just a couple things, simple things, just like these little Glad storage cups. I mean, if you don't even need that many of them, you can use these to store some things if you're commuting to work, things to take for your lunch. But these stack nice and neat. You can throw them in a bag when you're going to play, or you can actually put the lid on them, throw them in the box. But they do a really good job keeping all of your bits and components nice, neat, and organized in one particular space. Another thing too are these acrylic overlays, and special thanks to Boardgame Innovations for sending some product along for you to be able to see and for me to talk about, and I'll have a separate video for those in the future. But specifically, if you're a person who plays Terra Mystica, this is a worthwhile investment because it is definitely going to keep your playing area nice, neat, and organized, particularly in the area where you have the bowls of power, because you have that little bit of acrylic that is going to help act as a little wall to keep the pieces where they need to be. And then also for somebody, if you're really finicky about your playing area, it's going to keep all of the buildings nice, neat, and organized. And so very, very well done there. I also showed you the ones for Istanbul, and those are really, really good if you are a person who's not real attentive to your playing space, because you can actually, especially playing Istanbul, if you roll the dice or if you knock something the wrong way, you can actually disrupt your own gameplay because you may not realize what resources you have because you may have moved something in the wheelbarrow. So there's a couple things to keep in mind. Also, other ideas using Playmats. Those come in a variety of sizes, colors, and price ranges. And those are really, really good if you're playing card games or if you're playing dice games. They're just going to facilitate for a nice central area to keep everything focused on playing there. And it's also going to help protect your bits along the way too, especially when you're rolling dice. It's going to keep them from clattering around. It's going to have a little soft area for them to land. So lots of different ideas, different things that you can do for pimping out your gaming area. That's why I call it pimping out your boards. And so hope that you find this useful. A couple things that you can use for your shopping ideas, especially for gifts. You can look in your local stores to find different things to pick up, or you can check out like BoardgameInnovations.com. I'll have the address in the video description below. You can check out their acrylic overlays stuff too. So that's it for this episode. Join me again for episode 3, which will be pimping out our boards, and we'll take a look at that stuff, and I'll talk to you next time. All right, that's it for now, and we'll see you. Bye-bye.